The night this happened, I remember the exact feeling, that sense of something being wrong, almost before anything even began. I was 17 and it was late October. A couple of weeks before Halloween, I was staying over at my friend Jordan's house with two other friends, Isaac and Tom. We'd all known each other since middle school, real tight group, the kind that's comfortable doing absolutely nothing together. I think that's what makes what happens so unsettling. It was supposed to be a regular night, just us hanging out, cracking jokes, playing video games until we got tired. Nothing crazy. Jordan lived in this older house at the edge of town. It was one of those big, split-level places with a basement that had been finished maybe 30 years ago, and you could tell. The floor was that weird brownish carpet, and the walls were lined with wood paneling, giving off this permanent smell of must and dust. It's the kind of basement that always felt cold, no matter how many blankets you piled on or how many layers you wore. Anyway, that night we decided to set up camp in the basement. Jordan's parents were home, but they'd gone to bed pretty early, so it was just the four of us downstairs with the lights dimmed low, sitting in a circle on the floor playing cards. Isaac was telling us about this creepy story he'd read online, one of those haunted video game stories. He was getting all worked up about it, but none of us were buying it. Tom kept saying he'd seen it all before, that none of those stories ever actually happened to real people. But then, halfway through our game, we started hearing these sounds. Just little creaks and taps at first, like someone was walking around upstairs. We all thought it was just the house settling. I mean, Jordan's house was old. It made noises like that all the time, but it didn't stop. Instead, it got louder, like someone was walking down the hallway directly above us. Jordan glanced up at the ceiling, rolling his eyes. Probably my parents. They're always getting up for water in the middle of the night, he muttered. But then, after a few minutes, he got this weird look on his face. My parents' room is on the other side of the house, he said slowly. And we all looked at each other, trying to play it cool, even though I think we all felt that twist of unease. But after a few minutes, we heard a soft, muffled sound coming from the direction of the stairs. It was faint, but I could swear it was someone calling my name. Just a whisper, but it sounded so real, like someone was actually there, right at the top of the stairs. Evan. I looked around, hoping one of the guys had heard it too, but they were all staring down at their cards. I thought maybe I was just hearing things. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was my imagination, but then I heard it again. Evan, come here. This time it was clearer, and it sounded exactly like my mom. My heart was pounding. There was no reason for her to be here. She dropped me off hours ago and was supposed to be home. But the voice was so familiar, so close, it felt real. I looked over at Jordan, who was staring at me, pale as a ghost. Dude, he whispered, did you hear that? Before I could respond, Tom spoke up. Hey man, if this is some kind of prank, it's not funny. Are you kidding me? I said. Why would I do that? Isaac just kept looking between us like he couldn't tell if we were messing with him or if we were actually scared. Guys, maybe we're just, I don't know, freaking ourselves out. It's probably nothing. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I couldn't shake this sense that something was wrong, really wrong. We all tried to laugh it off, but no one was actually laughing. The basement felt colder than ever, and suddenly every little sound made me jump. Then all at once the lights flickered and went out. The four of us just sat there in the dark, no one saying a word, waiting. I remember thinking I could feel someone standing right behind me, like if I turned around, I'd see someone staring back at me, but I couldn't bring myself to look. I didn't want to know. After a minute, the lights came back on. Jordan was the first to speak. All right. This is getting ridiculous, he said, trying to sound brave, but his voice was shaking. I'm gonna go check upstairs. Maybe one of my parents is messing with us. We all went with him, even though I don't think any of us really wanted to. We just didn't want to be alone. We headed up the stairs, one by one, moving as quietly as we could. When we got to the top, the house was completely dark and silent. No sign of anyone. Jordan tiptoed down the hall to his parents' room, cracked the door open and peeked inside. His parents were fast asleep. He closed the door, looking at us with this weird, almost haunted expression. They're both out cold, he whispered. It wasn't them. We stood there in the hallway, and I'm not sure what to do. I think we all wanted to go home, but none of us wanted to admit it. Finally, Isaac broke the silence. Maybe we just go back downstairs. Try to get some sleep. Forget about this whole thing. Reluctantly, we agreed. We went back to the basement, each of us wrapping up in our blankets, trying to act like we weren't still completely freaked out. But none of us could sleep. We just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to every little creak and groan of the house. Then sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up to this strange rhythmic tapping. I sat up, my heart pounding, straining to hear. It was coming from the other side of the basement, near the old storage room that Jordan's family used for holiday decorations and random junk. The tapping was slow and steady, like someone was tapping their finger against the wall. I held my breath, trying not to move. And then out of the darkness, I heard that voice again. Evan. I felt this wave of pure terror. I couldn't ignore it this time. I sat up, glancing around at the others, who were all wide awake, staring at the same spot in the darkness. I whispered, "Did you guys hear that?" They all nodded, eyes wide. No one said a word. We just sat there, too scared to move, listening as the tapping got closer, inch by inch, until it sounded like it was right next to us. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. We didn't wait around to find out what would happen next. We grabbed our stuff, bolted upstairs, and ran out the front door, not even bothering to lock it. We just kept running down the street, not stopping until we were at least 3 blocks away. When we finally stopped, all of us out of breath, we looked back at Jordan's house, shrouded in darkness, completely still. None of us slept that night, and none of us ever went back to Jordan's basement again. To this day, I don't know what we heard or why it called my name. But every now and then, I still think about that voice. And sometimes, when I'm lying in bed late at night, I swear I hear it again. That faint, haunting whisper.